Welcome to Community Foundation Spotlight. We're proud of this series of programs on Pac14 that feature organizations in our community that are really making a difference for the lives of local citizens. Today my guest is Ted Evans, and Ted is with the Christian Shelter here in Salisbury. Ted, welcome.
Thank you, Spicer. It's great to be here.
And are you chairperson of the board currently?
I've been chairperson. I was chairperson last year, just a regular board member.
Okay, but you've been on the board of Christian Shelter for quite a while, haven't you?
Spicer, it's been almost close to, I believe, 20 years. I actually came on the board when David Greer was on the board, and have been there ever since. So,
well, Christian Shelter is really quite a remarkable success story. Tell our viewers a little bit of the history of Christian Shelter, you know, how it originated and what you've been doing all those years.
Interesting enough, I believe it was back in August of, I think it was in '79, and there were several folks here in the area that really had a burden on serving the homeless and seeing a need for an emergency shelter. And they would get together, and they were in prayer about this ministry or about the need. And as they began developing this vision, other folks from the community came alongside and came together. And I believe it was August of 1979 that the Christian Shelter was incorporated here in the state of Maryland. And later on that fall, there was an agreement made with Grace United Methodist Church to lease an old building on their property at 326 Barclay. And over time, between donation of materials, the expertise of carpentry, et cetera, things of that nature, it was, I believe, December 9th of 1980 that the Christian Shelter actually opened its doors. Very small capacity, but we're ready to start serving the homeless.
Now that was a different building than what you're in now, correct?
That is correct.
It's a building that was across the street.
Yes.
And you've since moved into what was the former shirt factory building, I think.
That is correct. Over time, I believe that there were several other buildings located near the old shelter. And there was those board members were able to purchase that, or the shelter was able to purchase that over time, and we had a small housing area there, plus our old kitchen, and used that facility or those facilities and buildings for about 20 years.
And Christian Shelter is basically an emergency shelter for the homeless.
Correct.
Describe what that means in terms of your mission.
Okay, I'm the emergency shelter needs are at Christian Shelter. We are able to meet those immediate needs of someone who is homeless. To me, as I have been working at the shelter, I'm seeing how important that is to be a part of the total picture of helping in the homeless problem. But we are able to provide nutritional meals. Excuse me, sorry, lost my train.
No problem.
Okay, lost my train of thought. Actually able to provide the nutritional meals and the security of having some place to sleep. So that's what those original members, those founders, felt that there was a very, very important need for emergency sheltering.
And I think, unfortunately, I mean, this was 30-year history of trying to meet the needs of the homeless. It was a problem 30 years ago. It's a problem today, and unfortunately, it's been a growing problem in recent years.
That is correct. We continue to see a greater need for services for the homeless. Not only the amounts, but their services. In this particular case, as we are going into our expansion part of the Christian Shelter, that's one of the things that has been driving our decisions. To give you an example, we are seeing more and more folks who need shelter pretty much throughout the year. Especially during the summer times. Our numbers are constantly showing that we are turning away more folks than we are serving.
I was kind of surprised. I think it was a couple of years ago. I was talking to Jim Barnes at your shelter, and I confess I operate by the stereotypical thinking that it was mostly a need in the winter.
Yes.
And he was telling me that the summer is one of your high demand times. That often families will take people in around Christmas and
Right.
and that sort of thing, but then they kind of weary of that
And that is a trend that has really, we've seen that over the past, I'm going to say, good 5 or 6 years, that the summer months are full. I looked at some of the figures before I came here this morning and saw where we were at full capacity in like July, August, and September. And during those months, of course, the numbers were much higher on those that we turned away. So,
And Ted, what kind of services does Christian Shelter provide for your clients?
From ourselves, at the staff of the shelter really provides both spiritual and practical counsel to the guests that come in. Of course, we provide meals and a secure place to stay. But that is probably something that we were doing back in the original days of the shelter. But along with that, the needs, not only the needs, but the amounts of folks that we are giving shelter to are changing. One of the things that we find is that we have a lady who is a part of she's actually retired from social services, and she comes in once a week, and she meets with the different guests that are at the shelter in an attempt to help in planning. This planning could be in the way of housing, employment, giving guidance as to what alternatives might be out here in the way of assistance, and that might be a financial assistance. So once a week, this individual comes in. Secondly, we have some folks from the health department that actually come in and work with the guest on life skills. And I think that is something that we've been doing quite a bit over the past year and a half, and we're seeing some good results from that. And the other part of it is that there is an organization that visits the shelter. All these are on a weekly basis, but they visit the shelter and are working with families with children and how to deal with the challenges that they are facing being homeless. And that has created a challenge for us in a way, because we are serving more families. We're turning away more families too. But just having the dimension of having more children within the shelter sometimes really makes it challenging in the way of just its organization of just running the day-to-day ministry.
Well, I guess, maybe it's a good segue to my next question, and that is kind of who are the homeless, because I think sometimes there's this stereotypical view that the homeless is just somebody who's some old guy who's sleeping on a heating grate somewhere. And certainly the face of the homeless has changed considerably over the years. Who are the homeless?
So I believe that we can sort of look at 3 different types of folks that are homeless. First of all, those are folks that have become homeless through no fault of their own. They might have lost their job. They might have been it might have been a part of a family breakup. There might have been a death in the family. Challenges that they face, especially by being very low income. And so it doesn't take very much to throw them out on the streets.
Sure.
Even to the point, sometimes I've seen folks at the shelter that have come in that have been traveling, and they have just seemed to be in Salisbury, and they have run out of money and just need that time to get things together and to save their money and to continue. We have found and see that most of these folks are in this area are extremely motivated to get in, to improve their situation, to get that job, to save their funds, and so that's one area of homelessness that we see. We also see folks out here that are facing some physical and mental challenges, and that really cannot keep up with the fast pace that is out here in life that we see. And though they try, they just never seem to be able to keep their head above water. And so we'll see folks come into the shelter that are encountering that. And then there are other folks who just simply make bad choices. And their choices just really get them in trouble. And some will come to the shelter and they will have a very positive experience there during their stay, and it will be a catalyst for a real good change in their lives. And yet others just will not make that decision and will continue
Go back
on
to the
yes.
bad choices.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, because I'm sure you see shelter people coming to the shelter who have drug, alcohol dependencies,
Yes.
and those sorts of things.
Yes. Yeah. We also see folks that are faced with, and I think the homeless community is seeing more of it. Spicer is facing mental health issues, and we see that in the challenges there at the shelter on a daily basis in securing. Keeping the shelter secure, because now we are not only housing men and women, but we have children there, and families, and so it's created some challenges for us at the shelter.
Okay. You're watching Community Foundation Spotlight. I'm Spicer Bell. I'm the president of the Community Foundation Eastern Shore, and today we're talking about the issue of homelessness. And my guest is Ted Evans, and Ted is on the board of directors of the Christian Shelter here in Salisbury. Christian Shelter has been serving the homeless in Salisbury for 30 years now.
30 years.
How many people does the shelter service typically, and over the year? Any idea how many over the years?
No, I know in the figures that I saw last year, Spicer, was that we service well over 1,200 folks at the shelter. And again, we've talked about turnaways, we've talked about the needs for resources, but we probably, at least from an emergency standpoint, have turned away almost twice that amount. This year, in working with some of the intake information that I've seen at the shelter, I know that the numbers are still high. Yeah. And that the need will always be there.
Well, kind of a loaded question here. Where do you get the money to be able to afford to do that?
Well, there's one thing that those of us on the board, and it's most challenging at times, we feel that God is calling us to walk a very unusual faith walk, and that we are need to be totally dependent upon Him. And it has, especially over the last year and a half when things have been challenging, we've seen a change in giving. But we have to hold fast that the same God that has provided and continued this ministry for 30 years this December will continue the ministry for the homeless there. Okay. And that has been a strength for all of us on the board, and we're so
you're not dependent on government funds.
Correct.
So
Yes.
I mean, in essence, you depend on the free will contributions from churches and individuals in
civic
the community.
groups, foundations, such as Community Foundation. And I think one of the exciting things about it, Spicer, is that there are moments when we are at that ministry and maybe we are feeling the weight of the ministry. And something will happen. A donation will come in at just the right time, or a finances, a donation of food, things that are needed for the continuance, things that I know I take for granted in my own life at home. And these can be the simple things of food products for breakfast or for the evening meal, or paper goods and chemicals to keep the facility clean. But it is so refreshing because we know, those of us who are there know, and I say this humbly, those of us know that right then and there that God has made that provision for His ministry right at that moment. And that's a very humbling yet exciting part of it also. And
if somebody is watching and they've wondered how they could help reach out to the less fortunate in the community, certainly Christian Shelter is a way they could do that by supporting your ministry.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah.
Now, you have an expansion project that you've been working on. Let's tell our viewers a little bit about that. That's exciting.
It's exciting.
It's a tremendous undertaking.
Yes. And it seems to be really exciting, even from day one, Spicer, from the standpoint of how the shelter started. the shelter was incorporated, and then through the gifting of churches and individuals and the work skills of folks started that ministry day one back in 1980. And how we have transitioned, and as we've seen the numbers increase in the way of needs, we have transitioned to a larger facility. Presently, we are able to serve about 50 people at full capacity. Our numbers were telling us that the families with children were something that the numbers were just skyrocketing. So we felt so led to start the expansion project, and we presently now in that expansion project will be adding 8 more family rooms of different sizes. About 80% of that is completed throughout the growth of Christian Shelter. When God has provided the money, we have started in a direction we feel that He wants us to go. When we get to the plans, then we just continue in prayer and seeking just exactly where to go from that point on. We expressed that to the vendors who were a part of the expansion project that we're in now, and they felt that there's no problem with that. They'll work with us from that point if we have to stop and then continue. So we're about 80%. We have, I think the remaining needs, of course, would be wallboarding, flooring, but a great part of the structure of the family rooms are in place. Our emergency fire system and everything else is in place. So it is something that we feel really is tremendously needed, and especially as I visited and talked with some of the other ministries and locally, that the numbers are continuing and growing in their ministries also.
Well, I know you and I both have visited the other shelters in the
Yes.
in the area,
Yes.
and the tragedy that I keep hearing, Ted, is that the frustration of having to turn away families with children.
Yes.
Particularly women with children, variety of circumstances, no fault of their own,
Correct.
are without adequate housing, and they come to the shelters, and there's just not adequate capacity. And I know Samaritan Shelter in Pocomoke added some facilities about a year ago, and certainly there's a need for those type of facilities in this general area.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we see is that how important each segment of services of the homeless are important. I see where the emergency shelter is so desperately needed, and then to take that individual from an emergency situation and then to transition them into some sort of transitional housing, and then eventually to a permanent housing. And it's something that it takes time. I guess in so many words, when in life we hit rock bottom, it takes time to get back on our feet,
really does.
and to do it in a way that you set a foundation that is not doomed to failure. And so I see each aspect of all the ministries here on the shore being a very, very important part in the way of serving the homeless.
Now, it's something I meant to ask earlier, and I slipped my mind, is how long can can an individual or a family stay at the Christian shelter?
Okay. Usually if one enters the shelter, of course there's always flexibility on any of the situations, but usually if an individual comes to the shelter and he or she does not have an employment, we have to almost in a way set a standard that requires them to find employment within about a 15-day period of time. If they are able to do that, then we will extend that to 30 days, or again, if they need extra days to bring together that housing, then we will extend that. And we've sort of found over the years that you almost have to set that standard. We wanted folks to be able to start coming in and to begin really working to make changes in their lives. We will be there for them. We will spiritually advise them, any practical advice that we can share with the different guests. We're there to do it. We're there to be of service to them. But it takes effort on their part, and And I think we have a tendency, all of us have a tendency to sometimes to maybe to take the easy road. And so those things, though they might sound a bit harsh, I think what it does is it helps. It's a part of the process of getting back on their feet.
Well, certainly one of the things that I admire that you do at Christian Shelter is you really, when someone's there, you're trying to reintroduce routine and order into their life. I mean, they got to be up at a certain time.
Yes.
They got to eat at a certain time. You have a spiritual time every day that the residents are expected to participate in. Correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And that's part of bringing order back to someone's life.
I believe so. I guess so, more so from my standpoint, or I believe more so from my standpoint, that spiritual strength is such an important part of affecting those individuals that come to the shelter, and that to me it can be a beginning of a wonderful journey. And so we're there, and in the way of devotions, we're so thankful that member churches or folks that do our devotions there that come from different churches here in the community, been very supportive that way and have ministered to the guests. And so yes, the faith part of it is not only important for us, those of us that are involved in this ministry, but really important to the guests that really need to begin making a change in their lives.
Have you seen any success stories over the years?
A most recent success story, and it did not happen at the shelter, but it happened. One of our board members and I were at a church recently talking about the shelter and talking about the needs of the homeless. And there was a lady, we attended church that day, and at this church, and we had breakfast, and we're going to take the time after breakfast to talk about the ministry. And after services, she came to me and she said, my sister was at the shelter, and she said she has now been 12 years clean. And Spicer, to hear that, it was most humbling and truly a story of victory that how God had worked in that lady's life. So, and then there are almost daily, I guess, miracles that we see. Again,
well, I know you've told some of those in your newsletter a
Yes.
couple of times.
Yes.
That I've seen.
Yeah.
So. Now you do have a newsletter, and you post that on a website.
Posted on our website,
Right.
and we also mail a hard copy to the folks that are donors to the Christian Shelter.
Okay. And we're going to get our friends here at Pac14 to show that website address
Okay.
on the screen.
Okay.
So if somebody's interested in learning more about what you do, they can go there.
Yes.
And they could they call the shelter if they were interested in
Yes,
learning about the shelter?
either to ask for myself or our administrator there, Jim Barnes, and we'd love to talk with them, whether it be individuals, churches, civic groups. We're looking for an opportunity to tell just exactly the story of the shelter and what it's doing for the homeless.
Some viewers may be interested in inquiring as to how they can support the work of the shelter. How can they do that, and what kind of support can our viewers provide?
Okay. When I look at the expansion, I know that we are going to be looking, of course, at increased operating expenses, and it is something that's just a reality of operating a ministry of that size. So we feel that if God so touches the hearts of the viewers to come alongside of the Christian Shelter in the way of financial support, that would be something that I know is quite obvious, but yet at the same time a very important part of it, of the daily operation. As it relates to the expansion too, there might be a donation of materials. Volunteers, we have more children there, so volunteers in the way of, we've had a couple ladies that have come in and just been conducting like a Sunday school for the children that are there, and that allows in a way that gives mom and dad or mom a little bit of free time to be a part of the adult devotions, and yet the children are being supervised and spending some good time there. Things that are needed are just some of the normal things that
most of us take for
that
granted.
we take for granted.
That's right.
I take for granted the paper goods and chemicals that are in my house in abundance, and how that is used on a daily basis. With so many more children, we are in constant need of diapers. All lines, all varieties, and that is something that is the good folks come to the shelter, and in some cases have nothing but the clothing on their back, and the same way with the children. One of the things that the Community Foundation has been very supportive of, we saw a lot of folks that would actually come to the shelter. They might have just had a hospital stay, or they have prescriptions that they actually have no money. And so, in working with you folks at the Community Foundation, we are now able to help fill those prescriptions, and have made arrangements with the local pharmacy, and it's something we've set up a delivery, which is so nice, because again, most of the folks don't have means of transportation. They either have to walk or buddy up with somebody who has a vehicle that is homeless, and so those are some of the things that not only are needed, but just part of the overall volunteer program.
It helps get someone their life back stable
Correct.
again.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
just having the access to their prescribed medications
Correct.
is part of that.
Yes.
So, other volunteer opportunities there at the shelter?
Basically, staff relief is one thing. We have a dedicated staff sponsor that works there Monday through Friday. In some scenarios, we've had individuals from different churches who have come in and who spend a day. It's usually with one of our full-time staff members, but who spend a day in service. It entails some administrative responsibilities, and actually brings you up close to a homeless individual, to a homeless person. And so I think it ends up being a very, very positive experience overall with that. That's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, lots of opportunities.
Very much.
Well, we're kind of wrapping up here, Ted. I certainly appreciate you coming to be with us today and to tell the story of the Christian Shelter. For 30 years, the Christian Shelter has been a real blessing for this community, and a particular blessing for those in need, really.
Yes.
And as you celebrate this 30th anniversary, we hope you'll come back again and help share your story with us, and some of the success stories. We hope some folks who are watching will find their way to you to help support your mission.
Thank you, Spicer.
So appreciate you being with us.
Thanks so much.
And thank you for watching Community Foundation Spotlight. Don't ever forget the power of volunteering. At the Community Foundation, we see that every day in terms of the organizations we work with, the value of human service to supporting these organizations and reaching out to our own community. And if you're ever curious as to how you can put your volunteer efforts to work, check out our ShoreCan, that's ShoreCan, volunteer website. Lists volunteer opportunities. I think there's some from the Christian Shelter listed on
Yes.
there, and gives you an opportunity of how you can put your time, effort, and treasures to work to improve the quality of life here on the Eastern Shore. And thank you for watching Community Foundation Spotlight and being a regular Pac14 viewer.
Would you like to see your community organization or nonprofit group featured on Pac14? To get started, contact us at 410-677-5014 or visit our website at www.pac14.org. Pac14 is a great way to connect with your community.